Part 1. For over 200 years, Earth had been quiet. Not because it had nothing to say, but because no one in the galaxy was listening. The stars were full of empires, alliances, and councils, all buzzing with trade, war, and politics. But Earth was just another blue dot in a forgotten corner of the Milky Way. Its people built cities, told stories, and looked up at the night sky with wonder. They never imagined that one day, the sky would look back and decide they were worth nothing more than raw materials and cheap labor. That changed when the Varelian hegemony arrived. They came not with greetings, but with demands. Their ships, sleek, silver, and humming with power, orbited Earth without permission. Their envoys spoke not to presidents or parliaments, but to empty space, broadcasting orders as if humanity were already theirs. Within weeks, the Galactic Council, a body of ancient species who saw themselves as galactic peacekeepers, declared Sol System a protected development zone. In truth, it was a polite way of saying Earth was now a colony. The Varelians began stripping the planet's resources. Rare metals from the asteroid belt, helium-3 from the moon, even Earth's own oceans were tapped for deuterium. Human protests were ignored. When riots broke out in Jakarta and Lagos, orbital peacekeepers fired warning shots that vaporized entire city blocks. After that, silence returned, but it was the silence of fear, not peace. Most humans accepted their fate. They worked in mines on Mars, loaded cargo on orbital docks, or served as low-level clerks on alien stations. Among them was Daniel Cruz. He had once dreamed of designing starships. Now he sorted supply manifests on Viridian Station, a massive hub orbiting a gas giant 3 jumps from Earth. His job was dull, his quarters cramped, and his dignity worn thin, but he kept his head down. Survival, he told himself, was its own kind of victory. Still, Daniel watched. He saw how the Varelians treated every non-member species, with cold efficiency as if they were tools, not people. He saw how human workers were paid in ration credits while aliens dined in luxury decks. He saw the way council inspectors glanced at Earthborn IDs with barely hidden disgust. And he remembered the day the news came from Mars. Mars Colony Theta had been home to 12,000 souls. Farmers, teachers, engineers, children. They'd refused an order to hand over their water recyclers for reallocation. In response, the hegemony sent a single cruiser. It hovered over the dome for 10 minutes. Then it fired a plasma lance. The colony melted. No trial, no warning, just ash and silence. The footage played on every public screen in the station. Some aliens shook their heads. Others laughed. Daniel didn't speak for 3 days. That night he slipped a data chip into his boot, a copy of patrol routes he'd memorized from cargo logs. He didn't know why. He just knew he couldn't do nothing anymore. Back on Earth, far from the glittering towers of alien spaceports, another kind of work was happening. Deep beneath the dry hills of Nevada, inside a bunker older than the United Nations, Lena Hayes adjusted the calibration on a device that shouldn't exist. She was 38 with tired eyes and a mind that never stopped. Once she'd taught quantum physics at Stanford. Now she led a team of 20 scientists, engineers, and ex-military techs who answered to no government, only to a shared secret. Their project had no official name. They called it Aegis after the shield of ancient myths. It wasn't a weapon. Not exactly. It was a new way to move through space, faster than light, quieter than shadow. While the galaxy relied on massive jump gates that lit up the void like beacons, Aegis bent space-time around a ship itself. No energy spike. No telltale radiation, just disappearance and reappearance like a thought. The math had taken 10 years. The first prototype had exploded, killing 3 good people. But now, in a sealed chamber lined with magnetic dampeners, a small drone sat humming softly. It had just returned from a test jump to the edge of the Oort cloud and back, in under a second. Lena stared at the readout. Her hands didn't shake. She'd been waiting for this moment since the day Mars burned. Funding came from places no one talked about. Old defense budgets, hidden accounts, donations from families who'd lost someone to hegemony, compliance actions. No one in power knew the full scope. Not even the president. This was Earth's last secret, and its first hope. Meanwhile, retired Colonel Owen Briggs walked the perimeter of a decommissioned Air Force base in Wyoming. He was 62 with a limp from a training accident and a memory that never forgot a face. Officially, he was a groundskeeper. Unofficially, he was rebuilding Earth's eyes. Using junked satellites, old radar dishes, and hacked comms relays, he'd stitched together a silent network that watched the skies not for weather, but for warships. His team, mostly former pilots, hackers, and radio operators, called it the Ghost Net. It couldn't stop an invasion, but it could see one coming. Owen didn't believe in revenge. He believed in readiness. And Earth, he knew, was finally ready to stop being prey. Daniel, Lena, and Owen had never met. But they were part of the same quiet storm gathering over a planet the galaxy thought it had tamed. The Varelians patrolled Earth's orbit with arrogance, certain that humans were too divided, too weak, too soft to ever fight back. They didn't know about the drone in Nevada, the data chip in Daniel's boot, or the old colonel watching their every move from a dusty field. They didn't know that Earth had stopped asking for mercy. It was learning how to take justice, and the galaxy would not see it coming. Part 2. The silence after Mars Colony Theta's destruction was worse than the screams. On Earth, people stopped gathering in public squares. They spoke in whispers, even in their own homes. The Varelian hegemony had made its point clear. Disobedience meant erasure. But in that silence, something else grew. Not fear, but a cold, hard certainty. Humanity would not survive by begging. It would survive by becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. Lena Hayes stood in the dim light of the Nevada bunker, watching the drone's telemetry scroll across a screen. The Aegis drive had worked again. This time it had jumped to a point near Jupiter and back without leaving a trace. She turned to her lead engineer, a quiet man named Paul, and nodded. "We scale it up," she said. "Next test, a full frigate frame." Paul didn't smile, but his shoulders relaxed just a little. They were past theory now. They were building weapons wrapped in hope. Deep in the archives of the project's encrypted logs, Lena had written a simple rule. No attacks on civilians. Ever. This wasn't about becoming monsters. It was about making sure monsters could never hurt Earth again. Every design, every calculation was filtered through that promise. The Aegis drive wasn't just fast, it was precise. It could drop a ship into orbit without shaking a single leaf on the ground below. That precision was their moral line. They would strike hard, but never blindly. Meanwhile, Owen Briggs sat in a rusted trailer on the edge of the Wyoming base, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug. On his screen, a cluster of red dots pulsed near the Kuiper Belt, Varelian patrol ships running their usual sweep. But one dot moved differently, slower. He zoomed in. It was a human freighter registered as Kestrel, flagged out of Luna, but its transponder signal flickered in a pattern Owen recognized. Morse code, old school, almost forgotten. The message was short. Theta remembered. Owen leaned back. Daniel Cruz. He'd heard the name from underground channels. A clerk on Viridian Station who'd vanished after the Mars broadcast. Now he was sending signals from deep space. Owen typed a reply using a burst transmission that would vanish in seconds. Stay dark. Eyes open. He didn't know if Daniel would get it, but someone out there was still fighting. That was enough. On Viridian Station, Daniel moved like a ghost. He'd traded his clerk's uniform for a maintenance jumpsuit and spent his days crawling through service tunnels, patching wires and listening to comms chatter. He'd learned which guards took bribes, which corridors had blind spots, and which data ports still ran on outdated security. Every night he copied fragments of patrol schedules, fleet rotations, and supply manifests onto microchips no bigger than a fingernail. He hid them in food wrappers, tool handles, even inside his own boot lining. He wasn't alone. A small group of humans, dock workers, medics, engineers, had begun passing notes, sharing intel, watching each other's backs. They called themselves Echoes because they spoke softly but hoped their words would ripple far. One woman, a nurse named Carla, smuggled medical supplies to injured human laborers the Varelians refused to treat. A young mechanic named Eli rigged a broken comms array to send coded weather reports that actually described ship movements. They weren't soldiers, but they were choosing sides. Back on Earth, governments pretended to cooperate with the hegemony. They signed trade agreements, handed over mining rights, and broadcast messages urging calm. But beneath the surface, old rivalries faded. Former enemies shared data. Secret meetings happened in basements, submarines, and abandoned subway tunnels. Russia sent engineers to Lena's team. Brazil opened its deep space radar arrays to Owen's network. India rerouted black market power cells to hidden labs. For the first time in history, Earth wasn't divided by borders. It was united by survival. The final push came on a rainy Tuesday in Geneva. A Varelian envoy stood before the United Earth Assembly and announced a new policy. All human children over the age of 10 would be relocated to educational colonies for cultural integration. The real purpose was clear: break the next generation's spirit before they could resist. The envoy smiled as he spoke, as if offering a gift. That night, every hidden cell on Earth received the same order: activate Phase 1. Lena's team worked through the storm, welding Aegis cores into the hulls of retrofitted destroyers hidden in asteroid hollows. Owen's ghost net went live, feeding real-time data to command centers buried under mountains and deserts. And Daniel, watching from a broken viewport on Viridian Station, saw the first sign that Earth was no longer silent. A Varelian supply ship due to arrive at the station never showed up. Its last signal came from near Saturn, then vanished. No explosion, no distress call, just gone. He smiled for the first time in months. The hegemony noticed nothing unusual. Their sensors showed normal traffic. Their logs showed routine delays. They blamed engine failure, solar flares, pilot error. They never imagined that a human-made ship could slip past their defenses like a shadow through a crack. But Earth knew, and Earth was ready. In a secure bunker beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Owen stood before a wall of screens showing fleet positions, resource flows, and enemy weak points. Lena joined him via secure link, her face pale but focused. "We can hit Kalis Prime in 3 weeks," she said. "If the intel is good?" Owen nodded. "It's good." He didn't say how he knew. He didn't need to. Daniel, meanwhile, prepared for his own mission. He'd been assigned to a repair crew heading to a hegemony relay station near the Orion Spur. It was a suicide run. Human crews rarely came back from deep patrols. But he'd hidden an Aegis prototype beacon in his toolkit. If he could plant it near the station's core, Earth's fleet would have a perfect jump point for a future strike. He didn't expect to survive, but if his death helped burn down the hegemony's empire, it would be worth it. The galaxy still saw humans as docile, disorganized, and weak. They saw Earth as a rock to be mined, not a threat to be feared. They didn't know about the ships waiting in the dark, the networks humming beneath the soil, or the quiet rage that had turned into resolve. They didn't know that the spark had been lit, and soon the whole sky would burn. Part 3. The attack began with silence, no warnings, no declarations, no grand speeches broadcast across the stars. Just 12 human frigates painted black and wrapped in Aegis fields, appearing inside the Varelian shipyard orbiting Kalis Prime as if they had always been there. The yard was the hegemony's crown jewel, a fortress of steel and plasma guarded by overlapping shield grids, drone patrols, and 3 dreadnoughts on constant standby. To the galaxy, it was untouchable. To Earth, it was target number 1. Lena Hayes watched from Cheyenne Mountain as the first strike unfolded on her screen. Her hands rested lightly on the console, steady despite the weight of what they had unleashed. The frigates fired not lasers or missiles, but phased graviton pulses, waves of distorted gravity that slipped through the Varelian shields like water through fingers. In less than 3 minutes, every active defense in the yard went dark. Alarms blared too late. By the time the hegemony command realized they were under attack, it was already over. Then came the rods. From hidden launchers on the moon, tungsten projectiles the size of train cars shot into space. Accelerated to near light speed by electromagnetic rails, they crossed the void in hours. When they struck Kalis Prime's orbital docks, they hit with the force of small asteroids. Metal vaporized. Fuel depots exploded in silent fireballs. Command centers turned to dust. The entire shipyard, capable of building a fleet in a month, was reduced to floating wreckage before a single Varelian warship could power up its engines. On Viridian Station, Daniel Cruz felt the news before he saw it. The station's usual hum changed. Alien voices grew sharp, panicked. Screens that normally showed cargo manifests now flashed emergency alerts in jagged Varelian script. He leaned against a wall in a service corridor, heart pounding as a passing overseer barked orders into a comm unit. "Impossible," the alien kept saying. "No jump signature. No approach vector. How?" Daniel didn't smile, not yet. But inside, something unclenched. The Galactic Council convened within the hour. Their grand chamber, a floating sphere of crystal and light near the galactic core, filled with ambassadors from 100 species. Most had never taken Earth seriously. Now they argued in hushed, fearful tones. Who gave humans this technology? Was it stolen? Was another power backing them? No one considered the truth, that humanity had built it alone in secret out of desperation and grief. Back on Earth, there were no celebrations, no parades. People gathered in homes, in shelters, in quiet corners, watching the news with grim faces. They remembered Mars. They remembered the children taken for education. They knew this was not victory. It was justice, paid in steel and silence. Owen Briggs stood in his Wyoming trailer, sipping coffee as his ghost net lit up with enemy movements. The hegemony was scrambling. Fleets were being recalled from distant sectors. Patrols doubled near Earth, but it was too late. Earth's hidden navy was already moving again. A second strike hit a data archive on Xylos 7, where the hegemony stored records of every enslaved species, every suppressed rebellion, every human dissident marked for re-education. The archive vanished in a controlled implosion, its secrets erased forever. A third strike disabled a relay hub near the Orion Arm, cutting communications across 5 systems. Each attack was precise, surgical, and utterly silent. No wreckage was left behind, only empty space and broken empires. Daniel used the chaos to act. On his repair mission to the relay station near the Orion Spur, he slipped away during a shift change. The station was tense, guards jumpy. He moved quickly, planting the Aegis beacon deep in a maintenance shaft near the core reactor. It looked like a broken coolant valve, harmless, forgotten. But once activated, it would create a stable warp point for future strikes. As he crawled back through the vents, he heard distant shouting. A human worker had been caught stealing rations. The punishment was public execution. Daniel froze. He could run, save himself, or he triggered a false fire alarm in the next sector. Alarms blared. Guards rushed toward the smoke. In the confusion, the condemned worker, a young woman named Mira, vanished into the lower decks. Daniel never saw her again, but he knew she'd made it. That was enough. Lena received his coded signal hours later. Beacon placed. 1 life saved. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. She added the relay station to the next target list, not to destroy it, but to liberate it. The hegemony, desperate, began broadcasting threats. They promised total annihilation of Earth if the attacks didn't stop. They blockaded Sol system, cutting off all supply lines. But Earth had prepared for this. Underground farms, fusion reactors, and recycled air kept cities alive, and the fleet kept striking. A Varelian admiral's private yacht was disabled near the Pleiades. His personal logs, detailing orders to sterilize Mars Theta, were leaked to every major news network in the galaxy. Revolts broke out on a dozen hegemony-controlled worlds. Former slaves rose up, armed with smuggled human weapons and tactics. The galaxy began to see Earth not as a victim, but as a force. Yet Lena and Owen wrestled with doubt. They saw the fear in their own people's eyes. They heard whispers. Are we becoming what we hate? Daniel, now flying a Sentinel-class interceptor in deep space, radioed a simple message after freeing a prison barge near Cygnus. We're not here to rule. We're here to make sure no one else suffers like we did. That became their creed. The Council, fractured and frightened, finally sent an offer. Peace talks. Earth's response was a single encrypted burst sent to every major world. It contained only coordinates to a dead star system and a countdown. No one knew what it meant, but everyone waited. And in the quiet between strikes, Earth held its breath. Not out of fear, but because it knew the hardest part was still to come. The galaxy had seen its claws. Now it would hear its voice, and that voice would not be kind. Part 4. The galaxy held its breath as the countdown ticked toward 0. Every major world watched the coordinates Earth had sent. A barren system near the galactic rim, empty of planets, stars, or life. The Council debated endlessly. Was it a trap? A weapon test? A final warning? No one knew. But fear spread faster than light. Species that had once mocked Earth now whispered its name like a curse. The Varelian hegemony, once proud and unshakable, scrambled to fortify its core worlds, but its fleets moved like wounded animals, slow, confused, afraid. Earth did not strike again. Not yet. Instead, it waited. And in that waiting, the truth began to sink in. Humanity was not just fighting back. It was reshaping the rules of war itself. No grand invasions, no occupied cities, just silent, precise blows that cut the legs out from under an empire without spilling a single drop of civilian blood. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. On Viridian Station, Daniel Cruz walked through the corridors like a shadow. He wore the uniform of a hegemony logistics officer now, stolen during a raid altered with human tech. His Sentinel interceptor, hidden in a derelict cargo bay, hummed softly in standby mode. He spent his days gathering intel, his nights planning rescues. Word had spread among enslaved workers. If you saw a human with calm eyes and no fear, follow him. He'd already freed over 200 souls from labor camps near the Orion Spur. Each one carried a message back to their home worlds. Earth fights for the voiceless. Back on Earth, life continued under the surface. Cities ran on geothermal power. Food grew in vertical farms lit by fusion lamps. Children studied history, not just Earth's, but the histories of every species the hegemony had crushed. They learned about the Cathari poets silenced for singing rebellion, the Zorvani engineers forced to build weapons for their conquerors, the countless others erased from records. Earth was not just defending itself anymore. It was remembering for everyone the galaxy had forgotten. Lena Hayes stood in the Nevada bunker, reviewing the final schematics for the next phase. The Aegis network was now fully operational, dozens of ships hidden in asteroid fields and dead comets ready to jump at a moment's notice. But she hesitated, not out of fear but responsibility. Every strike carried weight. Every decision echoed. She thought of Mars Theta, of the children taken for education, of the silence that followed every hegemony atrocity. She knew they couldn't stop, but she also knew they couldn't lose themselves. Owen Briggs sat in his Wyoming trailer watching the GhostNet pulse with new data. Revolts were spreading. On 3 hegemony-controlled moons, worker uprisings had seized control of mining operations. On a desert world called Vexus, former slaves had captured a weapons depot using tactics copied from human resistance manuals. The galaxy was waking up, and Earth's quiet war had become a spark for something bigger. The Council, desperate to regain control, split into factions. The older species, the ones who had built the Council centuries ago, wanted peace. They feared what Earth might do next. Younger, aggressive members called for total war, demanding the Sol system be glassed from orbit. But even they hesitated. No one could find Earth's fleet. No one could predict its moves. And no one wanted to be the next Kalis Prime. Then the countdown hit 0. Every screen in the galaxy flickered. Every comm channel, every public broadcast, every private message system, even those not connected to the main network, suddenly displayed the same feed. It began with old footage. Earth cities burning under orbital fire. Refugee camps on the moon. Lines of hungry children waiting for rations. Then it shifted to Mars Theta, the dome cracking, the screams cut short, the silence after. The images were raw, unedited, painful. But then came new footage. It showed Varelian warlords kneeling in the ruins of their own command centers, hands bound, faces hollow with defeat. It showed hegemony slave markets shuttered, their gates welded shut by human plasma cutters. It showed liberated workers, Cathari, Zorvani, humans, and dozens of other species, standing together on a captured freighter, raising their hands not in victory, but in thanks. The message ended with a single sentence spoken in calm, clear English by a voice no one recognized. "We do not seek your throne. We only ask that you never forget what happens when you treat the quiet ones as prey." The transmission lasted less than 3 minutes. Then it vanished. No signature, no origin point, just silence. In the council chamber, ambassadors sat frozen. Some wept. Others stared at their hands as if seeing blood for the first time. The Varelian representative stood and walked out without a word. The hegemony was finished, not by bombs, but by shame. Earth's fleet did not return to Sol system right away. Daniel led a final raid on a hegemony processing center near the Cygnus Rift, freeing over 8,000 captives from 12 different species. He gave them food, medical aid, and coordinates to safe zones. When a young Cathari girl asked why humans were helping them, he simply said, "Because no one helped us." Lena and Owen met in person for the first time in Cheyenne Mountain. They didn't shake hands. They just looked at each other and nodded. They had done what they set out to do. But they both knew the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. That was the price of survival. The Council sent a new message. Not a threat, not a demand, an invitation. They asked Earth to join them as a sovereign power, not as a protected zone, not as a colony. As equals, Earth did not reply immediately. It let the silence speak for itself. And as the first human-built ships began to withdraw behind a newly activated quantum-dampening barrier around the Sol system, the galaxy understood. Earth was not asking for a seat at the table. It had built its own. Part 5. Earth did not celebrate. There were no parades, no victory speeches, no monuments raised in the names of heroes. The people who had fought, planned, and sacrificed returned to their lives as quietly as they had left them. Daniel Cruz came back to Earth aboard a retrofitted freighter, his uniform gone, his face older than his years. He walked through the streets of a rebuilt Denver, past gardens growing on rooftops and children playing in parks shielded by energy domes, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the peace of surrender, but the peace of knowing they were safe. For now. Lena Hayes stood alone in the Nevada bunker one last time. The Aegis project was shut down. The drives were sealed, the data encrypted beyond recovery. She had promised herself this war would not become humanity's identity. Earth had shown its strength. Now it had to show its wisdom. She turned off the lights and walked out into the desert sun, the wind warm on her skin. For the first time in years, she didn't look up at the stars with fear. She just looked. Owen Briggs stayed in Wyoming. He dismantled the ghost net piece by piece, handing the parts to local schools and museums. Let them remember, he told a group of students who asked why he was giving away such powerful tech. Not to scare them, to teach them that silence doesn't mean weakness. He planted a small orchard behind his trailer, apple trees, cherry trees, things that took time to grow. Things that required patience, not force. The Galactic Council waited. Weeks passed, then months. Earth gave no official response to their invitation. No ambassador was sent. No fleet appeared at the Council's borders. Instead, Earth did something unexpected. It opened its doors not to politicians but to refugees. Survivors of hegemony rule from a dozen species arrived at Sol's Edge in broken ships and life pods. Earth took them in, gave them shelter, taught them how to grow food in hydroponic bays, listened to their stories, never once asked for thanks. The galaxy watched, confused. They had expected Earth to demand power, territory, revenge. Instead, it offered bread and clean water. Slowly, carefully, trust began to grow. Trade resumed, not of weapons or slaves, but of seeds, music, medical knowledge. Human doctors traveled to distant worlds to help rebuild clinics. Alien engineers came to Earth to study sustainable energy. The war was over, but the healing had just begun. Daniel worked with the newcomers. He helped a Zorvani family set up a workshop in New Mexico. He taught Cathari children how to read using old Earth books. He never spoke of the raids, the battles, the lives he'd taken or saved. When asked what he did during the war, he simply said, "I tried to do what was right." That was enough. Lena accepted a quiet teaching post at a university in Oregon. She taught physics but also ethics. Her students asked her if humanity would ever build weapons like Aegis again. She told them, only if we forget why we built them the first time. She believed knowledge should protect life, not end it. And she made sure her students understood the difference. Owen, now gray-haired and slower in his step, visited schools across the country. He didn't talk about tactics or victories. He talked about listening, about watching, about how the strongest people are often the ones who speak last. Children listened. They remembered. The Council, humbled and changed, reformed its charter. No species could be declared a protected zone without its consent. No world could be stripped of resources without fair trade. And Earth, once ignored, then feared, was named a permanent observer, not as a conqueror but as a guardian. They didn't take the seat right away. They waited until every former hegemony slave world had a voice too. Years passed. The scars of war faded, but not the lessons. Earth's cities grew greener. Its ships sailed the stars not as hunters but as helpers. When a solar flare threatened a colony on Proxima b, human engineers arrived within days to reinforce their shields. When a plague broke out on a distant moon, Earth sent medicine before anyone even asked. The galaxy learned a new truth. Humanity was not loud, but deep. Not cruel, but careful. Not weak, but wise enough to know that true strength lies in restraint. One evening, Lena and Owen met at a small observatory in New Mexico. Daniel joined them, carrying a thermos of coffee. They sat on a wooden bench under a sky full of stars, stars that no longer felt like threats but neighbors. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. They had seen the worst of the galaxy and the best of their own kind, and they had chosen again and again to be better. Far above, in silent orbit, the last of Earth's hidden ships powered down for good. Its weapons were dismantled. Its Aegis core was buried in a vault beneath the moon, sealed with a single phrase etched in steel: "So it never happens again." Earth had shocked the Galactic Council. Not with fire, but with mercy. Not with rage, but with resolve. And in doing so, it had not just saved itself. It had reminded the galaxy what civilization was supposed to mean. The stars still watched. But now they watched with respect, and Earth, quiet as ever, kept its eyes on the horizon. Not in fear, but in hope.